The Louisville Cardinals and the Creighton Blue Jays. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. Thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Joining me today to break down this ultimate Know the Foe episode for the Louisville Cardinals taking on the Creighton Blue Jays, my guy, co-founder of the stateoflouisville.com, Jacob Lane. Jacob and I collabed for a very viral moment, very emotional moment of Louisville hitting a buzzer beater against Stanford last week, but wanted him to come in to join the show today to give a little preview for Louisville's upcoming opponent. Jacob, what's going on, man?
And take my shirt off. You left that part out of why you brought me on the show. No, I'm good, man. If I had told my mother that would be my first mass, somewhat viral moment, my mom would have been very ashamed. So, Mom, I'm sorry, but it was a very fun moment, and I will not take it back. In fact, I might take my shirt off again this week. So I'm good, man. I'm excited to be here. Let's talk Louisville Creighton. This is going to be a damn good basketball game right down the road. It's the only time I look forward to going to Lexington.
Yep, I will be in Rupp Arena on Thursday. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be audibly cheering because if you can't tell, I told you yesterday I had about 65 to 70% of my voice due to sinuses and pollen. Well, now it's at about 45 to 50. So hoping that this runs its course sooner rather than later. Appreciate you all for bearing with me, but I knew that I had to have an episode because I can't just have this show for 3 years and then when they finally make the NCAA tournament in basketball,
that's right,
I can't leave you all hanging. So we're going to tell you everything you need to know about the Creighton Blue Jays. We'll talk about the advantages, Louisville's backcourt versus the Blue Jay frontcourt, keys to victory for the Cardinals, and much more. Jacob, I think every team in this pod is pissed. Louisville's pissed they got an 8 seed, and they're playing Creighton. Creighton's pissed they're playing the number 10 in the AP poll in the first game, and then Auburn's pissed that they got to play one of these two teams in the second round. When you saw, let's put the Louisville as an 8 seed off to the side for a moment. When you saw Creighton as the 9 seed, what was your initial reaction?
Committee stopped working on Friday night. I mean, what the hell? Louisville, you say ignore Louisville, that's fine. Creighton went to the Big East Championship. They were a team that had literally no bad losses on the season and put together a stretch in which they go to play St. John's, competitive for most of that game, ultimately fall. And you see the 9 seed. And immediately I thought to myself, is this like the lowest 1 seed bracket? What is this? Did Auburn not get the number 1 overall seed? And it keeps going and going and going. And then really justifying how bad it was the reveal of the second bracket where you have Oregon, who was knocked out in the second round of the Big Ten tournament, the same seed line as the Big Ten champion that's in the South bracket with Louisville and with Auburn. So Louisville got screwed. I texted a buddy of mine who's on the Auburn staff. They got screwed, and they're not going to admit it, but for being the most dominant team in college basketball for 3/4 of the year, you could argue all the way up until the tournament time, it's not really the prize that you play for. So, once again, the committee, flawed human beings. Certainly, you can go down the list of reasons why it was wrong on all accounts in the South bracket in particular, man. But, this is put up or shut up. You got to play who you got to play. We can't change the seed. Now it's time to get out there and impact what you can control, which is the outcome of the basketball game.
A lot of Louisville fans immediately start talking about the Auburn matchup, and I said, hold on, guys, let's pump the brakes here because Creighton is a good team. As you said, they don't really have any bad losses. They went 15-5 in Big East play, thought that they looked good in the tournament. They took it to UConn and really kind of enforced against the enforcer, and then they just ran into a buzzsaw and kept it close for 30 minutes, and then Rick Pitino's team just ran away with it. But you look at a Creighton team that is obviously led by All-American Ryan Kalkbrenner. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, a lot of that offense goes through him. He's one of the best screen men in the game, whether it's pick and roll, pick and pop. A lot of the offense is, predicated on that. And with that comes a multitude and a flurry of different types of screens. Greg McDermott is really good in terms of scheming that up. Jacob, it feels like Pat Kelsey and the scout team, as good as they have prepared for teams this year, this might be one of their tallest tasks of the season with just how intricate this offense gets.
Yeah, literally one of their tallest tasks of the season. Thankfully, I think one of the things that I keep going back to is that Louisville just had a stretch of games of playing pretty damn good big men and playing teams that are focused on their bigs. Now, not so much with Duke, with the big freshman.
Malawak.
Clemson, yeah, with Malawak, and then with Clemson, with Shefflin. It's a different type of big, more so than it is with Stanford, with Maxime Renaud, who I think is a great example of what Louisville is going to face here, and Ryan Kalkbrenner are very similar players. I think that if Renaud was on another team, he would be thought of and looked at in similar light as Ryan Kalkbrenner. But this team is a very experienced team. Stephen Ashworth is a 27th year point guard transfer who is still trying to find another year
27th year
in the corporate workplace. But he is a fantastic college guard, limited athleticism. You kind of get what you get there, but he is a guy who is a playmaker. If you look at the season, the number of double-digit assist games or close to it, really stands out that he's a guy that can command an offense, right? And then around him, they have some interesting pieces that are really more about the sum of the whole than it is about the parts, right? They are a team that does what they do really well. I think that no one's going to talk about Mason Miller or Jason Green or Ty Davis as, big major names in the college basketball world. But what they provide to this team is invaluable in terms of their roles and what they bring. Louisville's going to have to deal with a couple of different scoring threats, and Jemiah Neal, who is another transfer, I believe, by way of Arizona State, who has really exploded for them. He's a streaky scorer, but has really kind of come around late. The 30% three-point range, the three-point number really kind of stands out. It's not a great shooter, but again, he can be a guy like Amir Coffey was in 2019. I know that's a name that kind of haunts us, right, from Minnesota, who gets hot in the tournament. He did that in the Big East tournament. And I know, right. And then freshman Jackson McAndrew is a versatile big who, can do a lot of different things. He complements Ryan Kalkbrenner really well. But this team they all go at what Ryan Kalkbrenner does. They move as he moves. He is by all accounts, one of the top big men, if not one of the best big men, if not the best big man in college basketball. Right. And Louisville is really going to have to bring it in this game, man. Like, that no matter who the opponent would have been, that's the case. But to be able to go out, this is one of those guys that can take this Creighton team on a Final Four run. I mean, he's that caliber of big man. Dalton, I really think that
two-man game is incredible between Kalkbrenner and Ashworth. Creighton's also
you know what they call it? The fireman and the plumber. That's what they call it right there. How about that for a white basketball
There you
go. The fireman and the plumber.
It's an offense that shoots a lot of threes. They buy into the identity as this is pretty much a typical Greg McDermott team as he's had at Creighton. You look to the defensive side, there's two things here. Number one, they are the best team in the country in not allowing their opponent to get to the free throw line. That's something that Louisville seems that they do well on offense is get to the line. So an immovable object meets an unstoppable force to see what happens there. But as a result, really that is the result of Creighton not taking a ton of risks. So they don't force a ton of turnovers. So if Louisville's able to not really cause any unforced errors, it feels like, if you can get some good shots off, Creighton's not really all that disruptive unless you try to take it to the rim, and that's where Ryan Kalkbrenner is right there.
Right. Yeah, and that's, obviously for Louisville, that's a great thing that you have the ability to get shots up, right? Louisville is a pretty good three-point shooting team when they're hot. Obviously, they can be pretty bad, but I think this is a game where you've got to be extremely excited if you're Pat Kelsey and staff to get Rain Smith back because while Rain Smith, is probably not at 100%, what we saw in the games that he was out was that Louisville struggles to, keep the ball moving and keep defenses from being able to truly collapse in on them and avoid getting to the bucket and getting the free throws that they do typically when they have Rain out there, and they can, drive much more because of the threat of Rain always being open or having to follow him with a face guard. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Louisville kind of plays with Rain Smith in terms of getting him off screens, using him, even if it's a decoy, using him to free up other guys. And really, the thing that you're going to have to account for in this game is your lob is likely kind of out the window. That lob threat to James Scott, depending on how they play the pick and roll with Kalkbrenner, it's going to be really hard to throw lobs consistently over the top of a guy like that.
Oh, I definitely agree. And that's something that definitely leads us into our next point. These two teams have two distinctly different advantages. Which one will prevail? On Thursday, we'll break it down on the next segment of this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries like IT, AI, web development, and more. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who has delivered incredible results. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. While I have you here, I also want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Fabric. Life moves at you fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family need. You can apply online right from your couch, and you can be covered in under 10 minutes with, in many cases, no health exam required. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for the future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Dalton Pence in studio with State of Louisville co-founder Jacob Lane, previewing everything you need to know about this Creighton matchup for the Louisville Cardinals. Jacob, two distinct different advantages for Louisville and Creighton respectively. We'll start with Louisville. That is the backcourt. The common saying that guard play wins in March. Well, you hope that's the case on Thursday. Louisville will have the advantage with all ACC first teamer Chucky Hepburn and how good he is defensively. Terrence Edwards and potentially Rain Smith. You could maybe throw Hadley into the guard spot, but not having Pop Isaacs hurts Creighton a ton. Stephen Ashworth is great, but as a collective backcourt, Louisville has the advantage here, especially on defense, where Creighton, Ashworth, not really a true point guard, has made good plays, turns the ball over a decent amount. He averages almost 4 turnovers a game. Louisville's at its best when they are disruptive. How much of an advantage do the Cardinals have in the backcourt on Thursday?
That's a good question. I think a lot of that depends on the health of Rain Smith. Again, I just talked about him being a decoy, but you'd like to have him out there contributing 20, 30 points to your bottom line, right? I think that what Louisville can be trusted to do is, one, bring a steady presence in Chucky Hepburn. He is going to be a guy that is locked in, gets. You can call him the Dalton Pence of the Louisville Cardinals if you want, man. I think this is a guy that is going to be scratching and crawling for every statistic, every point, everything, because he understands the magnitude of what's left for him, right? So I feel really confident that offensively and defensively that we're going to see a really good game out of Chucky Hepburn. I'd like to see him cut back on the turnovers. That's definitely been a struggle of his during the ACC tournament. Again, I think part of that is not having Rain Smith out there and there's more attention on him. If that's the case during this game, I think Louisville's going to lose. I think that he's got to take care of the ball and get back to a 6, 7, 8 assist type of performance. And the other portions of the backcourt, Terrence Edwards has been absolutely the best that he's been all year over the last couple of games. I mean, just fantastic play even through the Duke game. Stanford, Clemson, he's played really well. I would like to think that continues here. I think that he is going to be able to kind of find what he wants in the paint, at least in his one-on-one matchup. Now, a lot of that is going to depend on Kalkbrenner and how Louisville is able to pull him out. And that's going to be a real chess match right here, not the game of checkers. This is going to be a chess match between, do you put Hadley at the 5? Do you play Noah at the 5 and bring Kalkbrenner out and force him to come out and guard the perimeter? Or do you play with James Scott in there and understand that you've got to just live outside of the paint? So some of those spinning moves that Terrence Edwards has had, those are going to not be there so much. So I still think that Louisville's got the advantage. I'd like this game for Louisville's guards, just out of athleticism, shooting, defensive mindedness. But here's the big but: if Jemiah Neal, Ty Davis, Mason Miller, one of these guard fringe wings catches fire, that's going to be a real struggle for Louisville, because then you got to draw out your defense, and then Kalkbrenner can do his thing. So it's going to be a real coaching battle here between Louisville's backcourt and the frontcourt of Creighton.
It's going to be a battle of adjustments and attrition, because I think that, in Louisville's front court, it's going to be by committee. I don't think James Scott is going to be able to handle Ryan by himself. And that's where Creighton's distinct advantage lies, is in their front court with Kalkbrenner. And also, with some of the other guys that can, be able to.
They're a big team, they are a big team. Outside of Ashworth.
Frederick King is another guy that, Louisville fans will know. But, you don't win Big East Defensive Player of the Year all 4 years in college unless you are that guy, and Ryan is that guy. I would feel much better if Louisville wasn't going up against a 7'1" mountain of a man. Kalkbrenner is not only really talented, but he's battle experienced. His team has made the Sweet 16 in 3 of the last 4 seasons, so they are built for this moment. It's a veteran-led team. I'm interested on the defensive side because if you have James Scott in there, like you said, that lob is likely not going to be there because it's coming. And with James not really offering much at the top of the key outside of passing, Kalkbrenner doesn't really get pulled out of the paint all that much. Even when guys are hitting shots, it takes some time for Greg McDermott to be like, okay, you need to go out and guard this guy. So I'm wondering how Pat Kelsey's going to treat this. It's going to be a matter of, can James Scott make the right passes to get open looks, because, Creighton's probably going to play that man-to-man, so you might be able to get open shots. You just have to knock them down.
Yeah, I definitely think that you're going to have to get the best of the best from James Scott. I think there's no question about that. But I also think that Pat's got to really think through his lineups here. Yeah. One of the things you and I talked about during the live watch-along was the fact that there's lineups you can't play with James Scott, because if you put Traore out there, that's 2 guys that can't shoot the ball, right? So then you really limit what a defense has to do from that perspective, where they have to challenge you. And I think for Louisville, the matchup to watch is going to be how they use Noah Waterman at the 5.
I agree.
He's going to play more minutes here, because I think you're going to see them try what a lot of teams have tried and failed at. Hopefully they succeed a little bit more. And that's, you got to get Kalkbrenner out of the paint. You got to get his, big goofy self out of there to go out. And now he's a good perimeter defender too, man. He can guard in the pick and roll and switch. So you got to be careful with the matchups that you get. But I think there's an opportunity if you can get in chunks Noah Waterman at the 5, potentially even playing a little small and going with that Golden State Warriors type of approach with Hadley at the 5 or Traore at the 5 in spurts. I want to make sure I emphasize that.
Yeah, of course. You're not going to be able to commit to it all game.
Exactly. So there's ways to go about it, but you got to execute. And this is going to be a battle of coaching for sure.
And then on the defensive side for Louisville, going against Kalkbrenner, like I said, a lot of the offense flows through him, whether it's directly or indirectly, because he's such an effective screener. Right. To where even when he's not getting the ball, he demands so much attention, and his gravity on the court allows other guys to be able to get open shots. That's why you see Creighton in the top group in terms of 3-point shooting rate. Like, they get their shots off, and that's where Ashworth, if you let him catch fire, it's going to be difficult. But Kalkbrenner, I think it's interesting, in his last 8 games, he's shooting 12.5% from 3. So something that he's trying to find that form, but he hasn't really been shooting all that well from deep. That's good, because we saw Maxime Reynaud hit some of those big shots against the Cardinals, and hopefully Louisville can learn. And I think Reynaud is probably, I would say, almost every bit as good offensively as Kalkbrenner. Sure. The difference is just the defensive side. So I'm hoping that these past 2 games, not these next 2 games, because you're not going to play a guy like Kalkbrenner again, assuming you win. But if you can learn from the Reynaud games and apply it to this, I think that it's going to be able to help you out. But when he's in the paint, it's just a matter of, you have to rotate, you have to double down. It's going to take a lot of effort and energy, because once he passes out, you've got to continue to rotate around the perimeter to limit those open shots and just have Creighton go deep into that shot clock.
Yeah, frustrate them, put bodies on them. You got to be careful, though, of how the refs are going to call this game, because what you can't have happen is James Scott pick up 2 fouls in the opening minute and a half, right? You've really got to try to protect yourself from that. It's going to be up to James Scott and others to not foul and to help. But I'm watching that, and then the over collapsing of the defense has been a problem throughout the ACC tournament, of crashing down and trying to stop penetrators. And what ends up happening is the kick out to an open 3-point shooter, and then you're at a disadvantage on a closeout or the pump fake and going around it. So we'll see how they kind of play that, but it's definitely something to watch for.
It definitely is. And speaking of something to watch for, it's time to get into keys to victory for Pat Kelsey's team. We'll break it down. We'll identify what we feel like Louisville needs to do the most on the final segment of this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, that's literally me every day. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It's complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, so you just stop managing your money and start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Louisville and Creighton squaring off to kick off the NCAA tournament, 12:15 Eastern time. I wish we would stop that, but nonetheless, you get out of the way, you get some of those nerves out of the way. It's pretty close to a pick'em game. Louisville opened up as a 2.5-point favorite. It's kind of fluctuated around there. Predictions are kind of 50-50 from what I've seen. I feel like more people might expect Louisville to win, but it's still going to be a tough matchup. Jacob, I feel like when I look at this game, my main key to victory here is being the enforcer. We see Louisville at their best when they are utilizing that physicality. You have to make life difficult, not only for Ryan Kalkbrenner, but Chucky Hepburn has to make life difficult for Stephen Ashworth. That could be the more underrated storyline, that battle between those two really good guards. I also think that what comes with that is controlling the tempo. You have to, you see Kalkbrenner running slower up and down the court. You have to get in transition. You have to utilize tempo and pace. And if you can get Creighton to play at your speed, I feel like you're going to be at your best level of possible success. What do you think is something that Louisville needs to do really well to come out victorious?
I think the big thing is, shocker, you got to shoot the ball well. That is something that Louisville has not done consistently this year.
Right.
If you're going to play against a team like Creighton, where they take everything away in the inside portion of the court, you've got to be able to excel in the outside portions. And we know in a Pat Kelsey system, what do they look for? They hunt threes and they hunt twos in terms of layups and putbacks and dunks. Okay, so in this one, while you're definitely not going to just say we're not going inside at all, you're gonna definitely rely on your 3-point shooting. So you need a big 3-point shooting game. You cannot have one of those 2 for 19 or 3 for 15 type of games here. You need to shoot at least, I would say, 35 to 40% from the 3-point line to win this game. Secondly, and I think this is the most important thing, we can talk about Kalkbrenner all day long, but what I know about Pat Kelsey is when they go up against really good teams, typically their stars get theirs. And where the difference is made is limiting the impact of the other players around them. Look for Chucky Hepburn to have the assignment of making life hell for Stephen Ashworth, making him think nothing about wanting to do anything else in college basketball, but instead go work a corporate job. That's what Chucky Hepburn needs to do. Bring the application, bring the resume, and get Stephen Ashworth ready for life after college basketball, because you don't want him to ever think about this game fondly. You want him to think about how in his last game he was tormented for 40 minutes. I think that's the biggest thing. If Louisville shoots the ball well from deep and Chucky Hepburn is able to take away Stephen Ashworth and make life extremely difficult for him, I think that Louisville wins this game by at least 5 points.
And Jemiah Neal is one of those guys that he's a big-time shot maker. He's one of the only players on the team that really creates his own offense off the dribble. And he's one of those guys that this season Louisville has sort of struggled with. Like, the Stars have gotten theirs, but it's always a supporting cast member that ends up going off. And I could see Jemiah Neal sort of fitting that mold. So I definitely agree with that. I think that another key to the game is the front court production. I think that it's not just your usual suspects. You need James Scott to stay out of foul trouble, something he was not able to do in any of the 3 ACC tournament games. You need Noah Waterman to be the Noah Waterman of the past couple of weeks. Not only them, you need Abubakar Traore to be a plus-level player. And I know that, he's had to deal with injury, and there's a lot of things that he's had to deal with getting passed up on the depth chart. But when he's in the game, no unforced turnovers, ball off the knee, out of bounds where you turn it over, no taking the ball up and having an ill-advised fast break. Play smart. What you do best. That's play physical. That's know your role and execute it, because if he's executing at a high level, I feel like Traore is a real asset to this team because he kind of fills that pseudo Dwayne Sutton level role. So I think that Louisville's front court production, I think their guards are going to be great. I think the guards know the assignment. Chucky's playing against a team that plays where he grew up. Terrence Edwards knows the assignment. He's locked in. And then I think Rain Smith's going to want to prove something. But I would also throw Hadley into that mix as well. Louisville needs really solid front court production in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Hadley's going to have some tough matchups because he's going to be guarding some bigger guys. But he definitely should have the muscle advantage there, as well as the expertise advantage going up against Mason Miller and Jason Green, Jackson McAndrew. The one thing I'd watch for here is the rebounding. Jemiah Neal is one of the, if not the best rebounding guards in the country. He is averaging, I believe, close to 7 boards a game, is second behind Kalkbrenner in terms of rebounds. They both have over 300 rebounds this season. So you're talking about a guard that can really get after it.
6.1 for reference.
6.1. Okay. All right. So their second leading rebounder is a 6'5" guard. But what he doesn't do well is shoot consistently. He's attempted 144 threes this year, and he's only made 44 of those. So he's a guy that is going to shoot the hell out of the ball, but it doesn't mean he's going to make the hell out of the ball. So between rebounding, you got to win the rebounding battle in this one if you're going to walk away victorious. And then with Jemiah Neal, you really got to limit where he gets going on the court. You'll give him some shots. You'll let him live with some of those tricky step back, one-legged shots right at the buzzer. But if you take him out of the flow of this game, they really don't have another scoring threat. So I think that that's a really big key for Louisville here.
Last thing I'll add before we get out of here. We talked about an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Just because Creighton is the top team in the country, not allowing their teams to get to the free throw line doesn't mean it's 100% going to be that way. I think that Louisville's ability to exploit the mismatches and Chucky Hepburn able to get downhill and use that shot fake. We know Terrence Edwards can do that, spin cycle move where he pivots 7 times before he throws the shot. And he's got 36 head fakes in a row.
Yeah, the stickiest pivot foot in America, buddy.
Dude,
that's what that is.
Hopefully he can get guys to jump and uncharacteristically put someone in foul trouble. And if there is a game that you need to do so, well, if you can blow by Stephen Ashworth and have him commit those, trying to get back into the play fouls, and then also Ryan Kalkbrenner, we'll see. But that's something to focus on. But it's going to be a tough game. We'll be here to break it down regardless one way or the other on Thursday evening. Hopefully my voice doesn't lose another 20%, or I'm going to have Jacob back on. And whether Louisville wins or not might dictate whether he has a shirt on or not. But that's going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Dalton Pence, Jacob Lane in studio. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.
Go Cards.